Hey everybody, it's Honesty, and the season don't matter. I think it's three, but don't worry about that. Um, Season three, episode two of the Right Honesty podcast featuring Attorney General, and we are talking about well, this season is all things Ashley Nicole, but today or this episode, we're talking about the closer I get to you. But before we get to that, Attorney General, how you doing?
I am well, thank you.
How is your tiny supervisor?
My supervisor is doing well, thank you. And he kept to the working hours and went down at the right time, which allowed me to be able to hop on this with you. So I was great. I was like, thank you, boss. Thank you.
Is he in daycare?
He is in daycare.
Okay.
Yep. And thankfully he comes home, ready,
Okay.
to eat, to play around with us a little bit, wind down, so that usually when bedtime rolls around, he's not fighting.
Yeah.
But there are some nights where he takes a little longer than others to fully conk out. So
Gotcha. Gotcha.
yeah.
All right. So you recommended The Closer I Get to You to me. So I had already been on an Ashley Nicole binge, but I had been running through all of her funny first stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was the one that you recommended to me that was like, you're going to do this one. And you warned me. So, as always, we'll start with you, but I'm interested in where this book, before you kind of get into your impressions, where does this book fall on your list of Ashley Nicole books?
Ooh, it's actually in a category by itself.
Okay.
And I say that because it was a very difficult yet satisfying read. And that is not typical of an Ashley Nicole story, right? I think she would acknowledge that this was a lot heavier.
Yeah, she says that in the beginning too, in the beginning of the book.
Yeah, right. Than a lot of her books. And she had given a heads up, because I remember her posting on her IG before the book came out, giving a heads up that we were not going to like Lou. That I think she had said he's an asshole or something like that. And she said, but there's a reason. She's like, but y'all are not going to like him. And I've come to appreciate those kinds of disclaimers, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a newer development for me, where I never really thought about some of the disclaimers that I would see authors give, and I have developed a very deep appreciation for that, because I think there's, when we read to escape, right? We read fiction to decompress, to relax, to escape, and I don't like surprises in general, right? I think that's both personality and also profession. I really don't like bad surprises, right?
Yeah.
I really don't like, stuff where it's like, whoa, somebody should have told me that was going to happen. So I've come to really appreciate when authors are like, yoo-hoo,
right.
FYI, trigger warning.
Right.
Because then I think that you as a reader can make a more informed decision. Do I go on this journey right now? Do I go on this particular journey at all?
Yeah.
I done had folks kill the main character, and I'm like, whoa, flag on the play.
Yeah.
Excuse me, right? Because, yes, we know that can happen, but, call me naive. I go to my fiction. I'm not necessarily
right, especially romance.
The butterflies and rainbows all the time, but I'm also not a happy camper when the main character dies. And you're like, wow, okay.
I don't think I've ever read a romance where the main character dies.
Just read one a couple of weeks ago, and I was not happy. I was like,
so
wow.
Who was it a part one? Who did they end up with? Who does the other part? How do you get to happily ever after, or you don't?
You didn't get a happily ever after.
Oh, child, I would have been so angry.
Yeah, I was pretty upset, and it was in the context of the woman had, she was an addict. She was a functioning addict, but it was bad. She had been sexually abused. She finds love. They seem to be on the right path. and she spirals again. And he can't deal with it, and he says, you know, we can't be together. And she's like, I understand. And she ends up killing herself. Whoa. And I was like, excuse me. Like I felt betrayed, because I was like, no, you gave us a glimpse of possibly happily ever after, and then you snatched it away in such a cruel fashion.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I would argue about that. I think if they don't do happily ever after or happy for now, that it's not a romance. It's just fiction.
And listen, in fairness to the author, I will go back, because it may not be categorized as romance. But I've read other books from this author. All of the other books that I've read, and I have not gone through the entire catalog, but the other books certainly fell in that they were happily ever after or happy for now.
Yeah.
And so I really felt blindsided by the way that ended. And I was like, not okay. Not okay. So I say all that to say, kind of coming back to AshleyNicole, I appreciated that, you know, the heads up, because when I started reading, kind of going back to talking about Grace from last week, I extended Lou grace, while also being like, wow, he is on another level with it. But I had AshleyNicole's words and her provisos in my head, right? And so I said, okay, we're going to be told why. And I'm assuming the why is not a justifiable excuse, but the why is going to explain why.
Yeah.
And boy, did it, right? So yeah, that's why I say this book is I think just on a different list, because it was different for her. Not better or worse. It was just very different from her. That said, I think what she put together, because it was so much heavier, again, really speaks to her talent. Because you as the reader, once you know what has happened and you are watching him and you are watching this evolution, boy, you know what he's come from. And even where he was when we meet him is in such a dark, lonely place. And she brings him out in a way that I thought was very believable, right? Because it didn't happen overnight. It was baby steps. And I think certainly the theme for this was healing, right?
Yeah, baby steps for sure, because it's 50% of the book has passed before they speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she says that she says in the beginning that, you know, I can't remember the exact words, but in her I think she calls it thoughts and things. She said, this book is a labor of love. I'm so happy with where it ended. I really enjoyed the process overall. Unlike my typical projects, this book doesn't necessarily revolve around falling in love. It's more about healing, and the love that develops is in the back seat, just taking the ride. In other words, this is very much a slow burn novel. And I don't know how many people read the author's notes. I think everybody should, because you really need it. They don't put it there for nothing. And I could see people being disappointed if they didn't know what they were getting into. Yeah. So you were saying that it was about healing. So I guess we're getting into sort of how it hit you and how did you walk away. Any other impressions or thoughts, gut reactions?
Just I was, number one, I was going to read it because I'm such a huge fan of her work, right? But I think even for people who say, oh, this is too heavy for me, I felt that the payoff
I would agree
was well worth it. To see this man, this family, right, on the other side of things, because that's what we all hope for, right? We all hope that when horrible things have happened, that there can be life and love and joy on the other side. And so it wasn't necessarily, we didn't get, you know, like the confetti cannon, you know, the fireworks. It wasn't that, but it was deeply satisfying for me where we left them at the end of the story. because I felt like we were seeing this man who was, not necessarily all the way healed, but he was so much further down the road to healing than he had, as evident in his relationship with his daughter, in his ability to have a relationship with Sim, and they have a child, and because he's heartbreaking in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's like when you get past the Lou is an asshole, it's like, okay,
see,
that's
he
fine.
never came off as an asshole to me, and I think it's because I knew what I was getting into, and I knew the why.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
maybe that's what it is, right? But I think if you felt that way about him, where you're just like, wow, right? Because I felt Lou was an asshole when it came to Kennedy with her mother dying, and I was like,
so let's talk about that. Yeah.
Right? I was like, woo, okay, like.
What did you think of that choice?
Which choice?
Him, basically, he had intended it to be a one night stand. It ended up not being, and he was like, "You're bad," and he went on about his life. And I think he says, "I don't do connections. I don't do relationships."
Right.
What did you think of that in general? And is that something you could have gotten past if you were Samantha?
I think I got it once I knew what happened.
Okay, I still didn't get it.
I got and when I say I got it, I'm not saying
you agree.
I understood and justified it.
Yeah.
But I understood, and it was like, that's what's going on there. Okay. Right? This was not just some jerk who, some deadbeat who was like, well, I never, it just was what it was. And I never wanted this. And that's all there is to it. There was this reason, and it was compounded by her name, right? Which I was like, ew.
Now, how did Wanda know to name her Kennedy?
That's a good question.
That was one of my questions. I was like, did she know the brother? Because I know Lou's name is actually Keenan, and I can't think of the other brother's name. It must have been Kennedy. But it was Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like, how did she know that? I mean, maybe I guess he visited or whatever. But to me, it would have been that she would have named the little girl Keenan, or some version of Keenan. But that was the question I had. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, that wasn't ever explained, and I thought to myself, it could have been, because I'm trying to remember if there's a line in there where he says something along the lines of either she thought she was doing something nice by naming her after his brother.
Mm-hmm.
But just imagine your own child's name being the trigger for you. Right. And I think most of us, particularly as women, we're like, well, that wouldn't,
that wouldn't stop the show, but
right. And or that wouldn't happen, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Right. But are you sure? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because life can happen. And I just thought that it was presented in a way, because I just kept thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? What's happening here? Right? What is the issue here? Because Lou's coldness was both, I thought, really well done in terms of she presented it so credibly that I believed. Right? I didn't think that Lou was putting on. I didn't think that Lou was being overly dramatic in his coldness. His coldness was palpable. His I don't care was like, I felt that. I was like, oh, he really, really doesn't care. Right? I mean, there are instances where you're reading and the character is, it's almost like the lady doth protest too much. Right?
Yeah.
Not so with Lou. Lou said what he meant, and he meant what he said. And I really do believe, when he's having the conversation with Aunt Bert, and she's like, Lou, your daughter has lost her mother. And I could see him giving her the blank stare. Like, I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean to me, just completely shut down.
Yeah. So this is where I did not connect with Lou the way that I connected with Raji. The reason I think that I connected with Samantha from day one, and of course Taryn, and I think we're gonna talk about her next week. But Lou, I did not connect with him because he and now, of course, let me project my lived experience onto these characters. Y'all know that's what I do. He was the emotionally unavailable man that it is so dangerous to try to connect to.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
I think that the only reason, and now, so let's, I'm jumping into real life, and I have encountered emotionally available men that I thought that I could love out of their foolishness. And of course you never can.
Correct.
But I felt like the only reason any reader could see any redeeming value in Lou is because we had the benefit of his internal discourse. And in real life, when you engage with an emotionally unavailable person, you don't have that, and that's why it's so dangerous. And so what you end up doing is assuming that they think and feel certain things because they allow you to be in their presence. But you may be no closer to the prize on day 365 than you were on day one because they are emotionally unavailable. So I think I was scared for Samantha. Like,
interesting.
Girl, please be careful wading into this man. Because she's living her life. She's given Winter lights, and I'm only making the comparison not because the stories are the same at all. The only thing that they have in common is a man that has experienced sexual abuse and a woman who's not going to let that be the reason that she's not with him.
Yes.
So I don't want anybody reading to feel like, HP always drawing comparisons and saying that one book is like the other. That's not what I'm doing. That's like a reductionist view of it. But it is awesome when authors tackle issues like this and you watch the couple come together over time. And I think in Raji and Winter's case and in Lou and Samantha's case, it was beautiful to see, even though I had a little bit less love for Lou than I had for Raji. But my concern was Samantha. I was like, girl, watch yourself. Watch it.
So I'm so glad that you brought up Raji Winter, because I agree with you, right? That this gave me shades of that. And I think it was Samantha and Winter truly were judgment-free zones.
Yeah.
Right? Like they truly were, and neither one, I think in the beginning, neither one was going into it with, oh, I'm gonna love you past this. Right?
Yeah.
With Winter, it's a business arrangement,
right.
And then it becomes this, we have to tolerate each other, be in each other's presence. With Samantha, it started because of Kennedy. Right? And her desire was to see Lou have a better engagement and ultimately a relationship with his daughter. So she wasn't going into it with this, let me put on my cape.
Right.
I'm going to love you past this, right? They had slept together. It was a weird encounter. She would see him in passing at the bar. She was cool with not engaging with him further. He was cool with not engaging with her further. I think that had the stars not, quote unquote, aligned and Kennedy not come to live with him, I think that Lou and Samantha could have gone years, right? Continuing to occasionally run into each other in the bar, eyes meeting across the room, but never taking it any further, right? Samantha being like, well, one monkey don't stop no show, whatever. And Lou being like, she intrigues me, but I'm not trying to go there, and I'm not going to act on this, right? So I do think that what Winter and Samantha had in common was this: one, they didn't start out trying to love the man, through and past his, emotional unavailability. But two, and most powerfully, and I think what drew in both instances these men to these women, were that they were legitimately operating in a judgment-free mentality, right, towards the men, and also being themselves, right? So they were being their authentic selves, and they were not judging the men. Although when they didn't like the behavior, and I think this is different, right? When they didn't like the behavior, they called it out. But I think that's a little bit different from the judgment that these men were afraid of encountering because of these horrible things that had happened to them and the baggage that they had been carrying for years since those events.
And I think the embarrassment and the shame that comes from experiencing abuse like that as a man. For both of them, they were children when it happened, but there's still pressure on little boys to be men. In fact, we call little boys men. Little man, big man, that's mama's grown man, you know, but the baby be like 3 years old. So, you know, the little girl is Pumpkin and the little boy is my little man. And so going through that and being told or being socialized to believe that you're supposed to be able to protect yourself and direct your world as a man from the day you get here, only to have people that you're related to and close to and people who are supposed to protect you be the one that abuses you, and you can't do nothing about it.
Right.
And that's why it was so interesting to me that they had a sexual encounter, and that, you know, what made him I feel like what I'm gonna try to say without stuttering too much is that there was always something about her.
Yes.
And him mustering the courage for that one night stand and it not going well. And then since then, well, she says, because I'm trying to remember, because I didn't go back like I was supposed to go back. I think
he self-sabotaged.
Yeah, because she says she felt like he could have put it down, but he ain't really put it down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said the reason that he did that was because it felt too good.
Yes.
And he was afraid of losing control.
Thank you. He would not have known that when they were sitting across the bar from each other. It was just her energy that he was attracted to that made him muster the courage to even do that. And then for it to kind of, you know, surprise him as it did. And then from then on out, he was like, oh, I better stay away from her because she's dangerous, you know, in all the worst or the best ways.
Yeah. She was a beam of light.
Yeah.
She was a beam of light. Right. Just by being herself.
Yeah. Which is why I was worried for her.
and being so incredibly comfortable in her skin. And that's why I was glad. And I think I said this to you when you were reading the book initially, right? And we were instant messaging each other. I was glad, and I really loved that their connection, this part 2, right? Because if you say part 1 was the one night stand, part 2 of their connection, that it was tied to and revolved around Kennedy.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't, Samantha legitimately was focused on Kennedy. She was not trying to get back in with Lou. She wasn't trying to get another crack at him. Lou wasn't her, you know, she wasn't Ahab.
Right.
Lou was not her Moby Dick, right? She wasn't like, he wasn't like her Mount Everest that she was finally, and there could have been some element of that, right? Because we know, you know, what we know about Samantha is that she has the golden coochie, right? She's apparently sunshine from Harlem Nights, right? You throw her stuff in the air and it turns into sunshine, because she had the little boy's uncle acting Willie. He just went completely off his rocker after one night, you know. And so there could have been an element of he didn't bring his A game, even though I believe he had an A game. And that bothers me and that pricks my ego. There could have been an undercurrent of that, but I didn't feel that was at play,
I didn't
right?
get that either.
She was just kind of like, oh, wasted potential. There's something, he's got something going on. It is what it is, right? And she just kept it moving. But then she meets this young lady and, you know, learns about her losing her mother and sees her talent, you know, as an artist, and she's drawn to her, you know, and just her heart is breaking for Kennedy. And then she realizes that this is her father. And she's like, oh, Lord, right? Now she's really like, oh, Lord, have mercy.
Right.
And it legitimately started out trying to be supportive of Kennedy and be there for her, and also helping her, you know, how can she better navigate the waters with her father? Because it was just so sad as you're sitting there and you're reading, and he's saying himself, right, that they're in the house, they don't speak. You know, they literally don't speak. That he, you know, gave her the debit card to her account so that she wouldn't have to ask him for anything. And I'm just thinking to myself, I was an adult when my mom passed, and it destroyed me. I can't even imagine if that had happened when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
But he was so wounded, right? Like, what's the Amarion song, right? Ice Block, where my
Where
heart
my
used to
heart
be.
used to
Like,
be,
that was
right.
Lou. That was Lou.
And that's what made me worried for Samantha, because
Mm-hmm.
he goes into her room at some point and he sees that Wanda's pictures are everywhere. I think this is after he beats up the brother that nobody knew he had. And even that is like a lot for him to take.
Mm-hmm.
And for you to be so, which is why his aunt steps in and she breaks into his house at old Doc 30, and she demands, like, this is the ultimatum: either you figure this out or I'm done with you.
Yeah.
But to be that disconnected, that your daughter moves in with you and you still neither here nor there on her, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that is just provisions only, which is its own
Yeah.
kind of neglect, because that she's grieving. And of course, children,
Yeah.
every human, not even just children, everybody on the planet, no matter how old they are, needs connection and love and understanding, and all this stuff, somebody to be vulnerable with, etc. That's why he didn't read as an asshole to me. He read as broken, and I was like, Samantha, watch it, sis. Like, be careful,
Yeah.
because if anybody that's capable of that is not going to meet you where you need them to meet you. Now, his aunt pushes
Yeah.
him back into therapy, and Tamara, even though he's a little slow on the uptake, he eventually starts to seek Tamara out as more and more things sort of hit him, and he's not able to manage it. Like, he has the panic attack with her, and
Right.
he writes in his journal, etc. But I couldn't connect with him because he would not connect with his daughter.
Mm.
I was like, I don't. And then he was just generally not in the mood. He was just broken to me. And I know people aren't broken, but characters can be broken. So he was just like, ill. Like,
I get it. I mean, I get it. I get it. And I think, to your point, I felt like my opinion of Lou went from he's an asshole, and then as I got deeper in, I was like, ooh, wow, he is, wow,
Yeah.
right? This is another level of broken, wounded, damaged,
Yeah.
right? Whatever word. And it was beyond, because I think, again, in the beginning pages, you're kind of like, huh, hmm, hmm, hmm. And then it gets deeper, and you're like, oh, no, this is, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no,
because by
there's
the
a lot,
time he
this,
tells the
whoa.
story, I said, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, right. And so I think she crafted it in such a way that even if you started with, oh, what a jerk, right? Even before you knew what had happened, you are realizing, oh, no, some bad stuff has happened here. I don't know what it is, but it's bad that has this man. And it's not an excuse, right? It's not an excuse for the behavior, but you just start realizing, ugh,
Yeah.
yikes. This is not someone just being an asshole to be an asshole. This is someone who is deeply, deeply wounded and scarred. I think about even when he talks about when his uncle passed away, and that he couldn't handle being hugged, so he couldn't be there for his aunt at the repast, right? Like, that's right. That's not just leave me alone, I don't feel like being bothered.
Right.
That is, and something that we talked about last week, right? That time does not heal all wounds, right? But I thought the beautiful flip side of that was that yet healing is possible, even when it's been decades of you walking around with this hurt and this pain. There's not an expiration date on your ability to heal either, because he had done therapy before, he had done it before, and hadn't had his breakthrough because he just wasn't there. He wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And it took the catalyst of both Kennedy
and his aunt
coming to live with him, and now it's in his face, right? He could not continue to keep himself closed off, and then he starts getting this more frequent exposure to Samantha, right? So he couldn't just keep her in the box of, I see her occasionally and there's a part of me that's intrigued, but I'm never going to act on it again, so it is what it is. It took all of that, right? and Aunt Bert, you know, with her ultimatum as well, because knowing that she is not just requiring him to physically take care of his daughter, but she's pushing him. She's the one that presses him and says, you have to go back to therapy. It was all of those. I feel like it was the confluence of all of those things, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that not a single one of those things, I think, would have been powerful enough on their own to bring him to that point. He needed the confluence of all of those things at the same time, where he could no longer, kind of like what happened with Siani, right? With the box, the lid would not stay on the box anymore.
Yeah. I think that's it, and if I'm repeating myself when I listen back, I'm gonna cut this out. But as I heard you talk about, like, there's no expiration date on healing, that's true. And one of the things that made me nervous for her and Winter says to Raji is, I could do this with you forever.
Yep.
And you still may not. And so, because this is a romance and there are a fixed number of pages, and AshleyNicole sticks with happy for now or happily ever after, we know it's going to be all right. But I couldn't divorce myself from the reality that this is dangerous water. Like being like being with emotionally unavailable people, even when there is no trauma of his kind in their past, there are no guarantees. And I think the saving grace for their love affair is the fact that she wasn't looking for a guarantee. So I think it was perfect that she was, you know, she says, I didn't have sex for love, I had sex for pleasure. Like, it was perfect that she was self-sufficient, doing her thing. She had already had a father who was crazy, and, you know, she ended up living with her mother because he needed to be stabbed like 17 times. But, you know, they ended up splitting the sisters, and she had been through enough life that she didn't want anything from him. Like, she didn't have her own, let me say it this way. An emotionally unavailable person and an emotionally needy person, they never gonna make it.
Right.
But because the person that needs something is going to keep trying to prove to the emotionally unavailable someone that they're worthy, and you're never going to get them to validate you because they're emotionally unavailable.
Right.
And so it's just a vicious cycle. So what was so well done in this instance, which, even though I was worried for her, I was still happy for them at the end, was that she wasn't, like you said earlier, she wasn't asking him for anything. She didn't have any expectations of him, you know. And he was like, why are you here? And she was like, because I want you to be able to hug your daughter. Like, she lost her mom.
Yes.
Like, your daughter lost your mom, and you need to be able to not, you know, y'all in separate corners in the house.
Yes.
So that made it all right. But I really was like, whew.
And see, it's interesting because I wasn't worried for Sim at all. I wasn't concerned for her. Your point is well taken that in the real world, right, we likely know people, right, girlfriends, relatives, who spend years, precious years, right, pouring into someone who is a bottomless pit, basically. You know, and I think part of this is, to your point, you can do that forever if the person is not interested, willing, committed to changing and evolving for themselves.
Yeah.
Then 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it doesn't matter. And so I do think that in this instance, and again, you know, not some, you know, going back to Raji and Winter, but you had two men who, for one reason or another, and not wanting to lose the woman was part of it, but there were just other things all again coming together that was forcing these men to recognize the way they had, the status quo they couldn't maintain status quo anymore.
Yeah.
Right? They couldn't. And they had this woman who introduced them to something that they never even thought was possible. And they desperately wanted to see what could be.
Yeah. I very much agree with that. I very much agree with that.
Yeah. It's like, now that they got this hint of what could be, they desperately wanted to see that. What could that be? And I think also because Samantha was not, I wasn't worried for her because I was never getting the sense that she was in danger of losing herself.
Yeah.
Right. She was not, I just didn't see her putting herself in a position where she was going to be pouring from an empty jug, right, into a cracked glass that was always going to be leaking.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other part of it, right? Because I think when we see this play out, you know, watching Friends or Family, there's also that, right? Where you're watching the person that you love and you're like, you don't know when to stop. Like, you're not going to stop yourself, right? You're not going to put yourself first.
Yep.
You're always going to put them first.
And that's what
and they're always going to put themselves first.
Yes.
And so I was never concerned that that was going to be Samantha's problem. Whereas had it been Taryn, right? Different story. I would have been very, very concerned. Like, no.
Or even Siani.
Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Fair.
So that's true. I think what, as you've said, what made it all right with me toward the end was that she was all right. She was well.
Yeah.
She was well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we, the difference between that and Winter and Raji is that both of them had their stuff, different stuff.
Yes.
But they both had stuff where Samantha did not. I mean, she, everybody got something, but nothing on the level of what the other three characters that we've mentioned had.
That's right.
What did you think about the connection to Sunday morning?
One more time.
The connection to Sunday morning and the fact that the abuse would happen when they got home from church. Why did you breathe so hard?
Because, I think one of the, aside from teaching me how to live without her, I think the second most important thing, or maybe the most important thing my mother did for me was establish my spiritual foundation and help me to understand that at the end of the day, it had to be between me and God.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't be tied to the church. It couldn't be tied to a particular pastor. It couldn't be tied to a gospel singer. It had to be me and God.
Mm-hmm.
Because church folks broke my heart. They broke my family's heart with hypocrisy and foolishness. And because of that foundation, I didn't take it out on God.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me, and has continued to allow me, to distinguish between the institution, right, and the spiritual relationship. And so I say all that to say, because we know that evil is everywhere, in terms of, I firmly believe there are people who are just rotten to the core. I do, And so when it gets commingled, I think of, other situations where a person of the cloth is involved, right? Think of the Catholic Church, right? Decades, lives ruined, and if your relationship was tied to the institution, you could see how that pushes you to the point of no return, So, I mean, that, I think it wasn't one of the things that stuck me like a knife, but it was just kind of added to the list of instances where you've seen people do just reprehensible things, either under the cloaking of the church or their church people doing very ungodly things. And just, I mean, again, not to take it back to Raji and Winter, but you think about how Pastor McKinnon, for all of her spirituality, had no clue, right? And so that's kind of my take on it, right? That it just separating the people from, and the institution and the dogma from the spirituality is important. And that's why I respect when people are like, look, I have no use for the institution. I don't go to church anymore. I don't this, I don't that. And they're like, but I'm a spiritual person. I get that. I think when I was younger, I was kind of like, what does that mean? Like, how are you, I didn't fully get that. And that was an evolution for me as someone who grew up in the church. And then I had my own experience and I was like, got it. I see. Right? I see how
you want the baby, but not the bathwater.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And make that separation, because and you and I have had some discussions about church, but church folks will also make you feel like if you're not there Sunday, Tuesday, Friday,
Mhm.
and Saturday afternoons, you must be out worshiping the devil,
Right.
right? And all of that, right? That if you're not physically going to the place, if you're not in the building, that somehow your spirituality is less than
Mhm.
those that are in the building. And that's a load of BS too.
Right.
But when you're in it, when you're caught up in it, that feels very real, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I I'm glad she put it in the book. Not glad. I understood her put glad is wrong word. I understood her putting it into the book, and I think it was a useful angle or facet to add to this multidimensional story, because I think it speaks to the lack of accountability that there can be in church,
Mm-hmm.
mainly because there is this culture of you can call some people out but not other people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people can do certain things but other people can't do them, and I would have to go back and read specifically what he said about his mother and about what that experience was, but it it's tough for me when people use their faith or their relationship with a church as a cloak for bad behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this whole he know my heart, he's still working on me, and the way that people are able to detach and compartmentalize and behave between 11 and 1 on Sunday one way, and then at 101 they're
Oh
behaving
yeah,
another
the
way. But
hypocrisy.
right, even if it's
Mm-hmm.
not as extreme as what Lou experienced,
Right.
but you people get to acting crazy just in the parking lot. Now y'all just got up off the altar
Yeah. Yeah.
weeping and wailing and speaking in tongues and said, "Open the eyes of my heart, Lord," and all this old other stuff, and then you cussing in the parking lot. So I felt like this was it matched. It matched for this to be somebody's real life experience,
Yep.
and how dangerous it is when certain people are thought to be, or certain institutions are thought to be infallible.
Yes.
This is the
Yes.
kind of stuff that
Yes.
goes on, but you're not allowed
Yes.
to ring the alarm. Now, if you want, but if somebody get pregnant, of course, now everybody got an
Right.
opinion. Everybody got,
Right.
and when we want they got to come in front of the church and apologize, and she got to go down south and stuff. I don't even know if people still do that no more, but that's how I grew up. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but now they sit you down. The drummer gets sat down for a couple months, then he get to come back and
Right.
play the drums,
Right.
and then the girl that got
Right.
pregnant, she just be in the pew and mind her business, and then when the baby get here, everybody happy, whatever the case may be. But it if it fit for the person to be Christian
Yeah.
and yet visit unspeakable horror
Yeah.
onto her children.
Yeah.
So it wasn't tough to read in the sense that, like, oh, this is impossible. It was tough to read, like, this really be going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And full disclosure, I sped through
mm,
on the second read
okay.
because I knew,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
right?
yeah,
I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it.
yeah.
The second time around. And I was almost glad that I didn't have to, because I knew
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
what had happened, and gladly skipped through
Yeah.
when he retells in detail, right?
Yeah.
That detail was
Mm,
excruciating. And God bless Ashley Nicole for getting through that to write that,
yeah.
because I was like, oh God, I can't. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's just too much. Like, it was whatever I thought it
It
was.
was worse.
When I read it, I was literally, my jaw was on the floor, and I was just like, oh Lord,
Uh-huh.
this is too much. No, I can't, She could have glossed over that for me. Like, I really could have,
Yeah,
but
and the fact that it was a moment of exposition made it. I can't figure out if it made it better or worse, because now I'm gonna be honest with you. For Winter and Rajiv, I have read none of those scenes word for word. When I first went through that book, when the first scene came up, I said, oh, this ain't for me. And I waited until the end of the italics, and then I kept on reading. So if we do that book, I'm actually going to have to read it. But as many times as I have revisited them, I have never read those flashbacks of abuse.
You know what's crazy? Now that you say that, I have, right? And having read that book multiple times, I don't shy away from those things, which, you know, so I think part of this was, I don't remember the month that Closer came out, but I was either just getting ready to give birth, or I had just given birth. And I think that's part of it too.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was stained after reading it. I felt dirty.
It was ugly.
After the retelling, right? I was just like, I mean, I wanted to scrub my brain.
I couldn't believe he said it. I couldn't believe he spoke those words. Honestly, I couldn't, because what I was trying to say was I can't figure out which is worse, the flashback version of it or the exposition version of it.
That's a good point. Yeah. Because now that you say it, I mean, when we're in Raji's head and he's remembering, right? Yeah.
It was ugly. Yeah.
It was ugly. It was ugly. And it's funny because when I recommended Closer and I was like, we should discuss it. And in the back of my mind, it was like, do you really want to revisit
to go back?
Because remember, and I was dreading it. You know, I was dreading it. And then when I finished the reread, I remember thinking, God, I'm so glad that I went back and reread this book. Right?
There are some beautiful moments.
Absolutely beautiful moments. And again, for me, the payoff at the end, his healing, this family's healing, I was just so warm from the inside out at the end, right? And I just wanted to wrap this family. I wanted to be part of the group hug, right? Whereas, at certain points, you want to wrap them in a hug. I wanted to be part of the group hug because they were there. They were, at the point with it. And I will say, I cried the second hug, because remember, he and Kennedy have two hug moments, right? The first one, she's breaking down and he's just kind of standing there,
right?
Like, I know I'm supposed to feel something,
right?
She's, distraught, and he's like, this is all I can give her. The second hug was when I got emotional, because that's when I felt his breakthrough. Right? That's when I felt his breakthrough and just thought, more than even the romance, the evolution of his relationship with his daughter.
Yeah. And then the fact that I think at the very end, I don't know if it's the very end, but when we see him hug Aunt Bert.
Yes.
And she weeping and wailing and sobbing.
Yes. And she's sobbing and just,
Yeah, it was a lot to it. And maybe that's why didn't mean to fall in love, why I let it get to me, where I don't think I let this one get to me. It was too ugly.
Interesting.
I think Didn't Mean to Fall in Love was a safer read for me to emotionally invest in. And I think this one was like, almost like, when you're carrying something to the trash and it's stinking, you hold your arm out.
Yeah.
I was longing for the sweeter moments, and I wanted nothing to do with the challenging parts. Because
That's fair.
It was hard.
That's fair.
Yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, that's fair. This was, I mean, like I said, it's, I would hate to dissuade anyone from taking a chance.
Oh yeah, definitely read it for sure.
Because the payoff is beautiful, but it is tough, and I think, bearing in mind that there are people, right? Yes, this was fiction, but there are people who are walking that very journey, whose innocence was robbed by the very people that were supposed to love and protect them.
Yep.
And some of those folks many probably of those folks never find healing, God bless the ones that do, because healing from that just whew, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I rejoiced at the end that we were able to be part of and watch his healing, the journey start. Because like I said, it's not so much that he's completely healed at the end of the book, but he is deep enough into the journey where I, as a reader, was like, they're in a great place.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a beautiful place, and I'm happy for this couple.
Yeah.
And then we get to see a little bit of them more in Taryn's book, but because not only did he gain a relationship with his daughter and this romantic relationship with this woman, this incredible woman that he loves and who loves him, but I don't remember if it's said at the end of Closer or if it's said in Taryn's book that Samantha's mom, right, she becomes, another grandmother to Kennedy, and, the fact that she's always taking the grandkids,
Mm-hmm.
and, both Lou and Quace appreciating having this, phenomenal grandmother who loves their children and takes them all the time and whatnot. But he and Kennedy got more family,
Yeah.
by virtue of Samantha's mom and Taryn and Case and the cousins and whatnot, which and we're able to include Aunt Bert, right? Because that's it. It otherwise would have just been Lou, Aunt Bert, and Kennedy,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and Aunt Bert as the connector between the two, because
Right.
Lou, was clear, it was the North Pole and Kennedy is the South Pole. So it is, both healing of this tiny family that they had, and then an expansion of the family,
Mm-hmm.
and then also obviously when they have little Lourdes and she finds out she's pregnant again.
Right. And we see another connection to the parents' name. So we got Trina and whatever with Case and
Yep.
Siani, and we got Lourdes, and so with matched up to Lou. So yeah.
Yep. And interesting because, right, he just picked Lou, right? Like Lou
Mm-hmm.
didn't have
Mm-hmm.
any significance, he just picked it.
Mm-hmm.
But just being able to say his daughter's name,
Yeah.
and in light of
And not wanting her to go to
what.
school, and now
Yep.
he fell completely in love with her, and he don't want her to go nowhere, and
That's right. Went
and
from counting down the days, right?
yes,
Counting
yes,
down is like, okay, we got 3 years, and then she heads off to school. I don't care where she goes, I'll pay for it. She can go wherever. To being like, no, I don't want you going to the other side of the country. I don't want you
exactly.
going to Fayetteville. I want you to go to Yale,
Yeah.
and live at home, right?
And I think this book was about, by the end of it, the healing was there, of course, and that was all through it. But I think what made me happy about it was the possibilities.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That like he had gotten high enough on his journey up the mountain or up the hill. Sometimes you get to a certain point where you can look out and you're like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like for anybody that's ever, even if if you don't hike, if you've been on a plane, but sometimes you reach a certain point and the view is just like, this is what I could have been, you know what I mean? This is what was available to me. This is what, and the beauty of it strikes you. And, yes, the journey was hard getting there and your legs still hurt while you looking out at all the beauty, but it doesn't take away from the beauty that you're able to see, once you reach that plateau or that point in your journey. And
Because it was worth it. Because it was worth it, right?
well,
Because
his emotional growth was worth it, not what he went through.
no. What I'm saying is that no, that's fair. That's fair. What I'm saying is you're able to enjoy, and you're not so much focused on the work that it took to get there.
Yeah.
Because once you hit the peak, your mind is focused on what's before you.
Yeah.
I.e., you're like, oh, it was worth it. I'm not talking about the trauma. I'm talking about the work that it took him to get on the road to heal.
I would agree with that.
That was worth it.
Yeah. And I think he would say that too.
Yeah.
Once and the fact that you don't know that it's going to be worth it before you do the work or while you're doing the work.
Right.
You don't experience the worth it nature of the challenge or of the process until you at the peak.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
What were your loves?
I mean, I loved everything about Samantha, right? That she was so comfortable in her skin. And I love that Samantha was full figured, right? So we were given this voluptuous Black woman who was like, I love me and all that comes with me, and I am who I am. And, that she was so comfortable in her sexuality and truly was. I can only think of one girlfriend of all of my friends, maybe two, who could truly just have sex for pleasure without feelings getting caught up, because a lot of us said that but didn't mean it, right?
That's a real thing.
We wanted to be more like guys in that respect, but didn't necessarily have it. And so only two girlfriends who come to mind who literally said what they meant and meant what they said when it came to that. And I respected that with Samantha because she really did feel that way. I loved their mom, right? And it's blending a little bit because there's some of the mom in this, and then even more so in Taryn's book. But just thinking to myself, the beauty of what we saw, right? The difference between Samantha and Taryn, right? And what can happen when you have someone truly pouring in to you unconditional love, right? And giving you that foundation versus when the love feels very much conditional and tied to all of these expectations that you must meet in order to feel as if you are worthy of that love. I loved Lou, and I'm blanking on the young man's name because I felt like even in the midst of Pierre, that Lou, for all of his no connections, right? I feel like he would have connected with Pierre even without the dam breaking, right? I do believe that was a connection that Lou would have made and maintained regardless.
I agree.
Because he said he saw himself in Pierre, he recognized the signs. And so the coldness, while it was real and it was authentic, it's interesting that it very much coexisted, and I didn't have an issue with it. Like, it was believable to me that he was both cold, except for in this one instance. And it wasn't so much him not being cold, but him just recognizing himself in another kid and thinking to himself, I want to help, right? But even then, like, he didn't go overboard, right? He wasn't jumping off the roof in terms of trying to help Pierre, but that was more so guided by him remembering how he felt when he was in Pierre's shoes, right? And not wanting to, and not wanting to run Pierre off, not wanting to scare him off, right?
And he did what he had the emotional capacity to do.
Like,
I don't get the sense that him and Pierre was brushing each other's hair and planting flowers together.
No. Right.
They probably barely spoke to each other, but at least Pierre had another adult that he could be in the presence of and do whatever they were doing at the community center, and just know that if I go to the community center, I'm gonna see Mr. Lou. You know what I mean? And I may not go every day or every week or whatever, but when I'm there, like, I know I'm gonna see him. And even the moment where he, takes his book bag or something about the book bag, the boy can go home and kill somebody. And does eventually do it. And it's Taryn that is able to, I think in the next book, sort of help him out of that.
Yes. Case takes the case.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and you're talking about, he takes the gun. He takes the gun because he can tell, right? He's watching Pierre's body language and the facial expressions, and he knows that look, right? And I think he said something along what Lou thinks to himself, that Pierre looked the way that Kennedy looked the day he killed himself.
Yep. Ooh, God.
And that was an interesting, the complex feelings about that, right? And all that he was feeling about Kennedy and just
it was a lot. It was a lot.
It was brilliantly done, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot. My loves, and I think I said the name wrong before. I think I said Siani and Case, but I meant to say Siani and Tris.
Yes.
With Trina and whatever other little girl name was. My loves were Aunt Bert's ultimatum.
Yep.
I appreciated her being like, let me make this real for you because you confused.
Yep.
I love the little scene with Trinity and the mama saying, let's come together at night. Samantha has to say to the mother, your daughter can hear you having sex at night. She can hear your sex conversations.
Yes.
And this was right before she and Willie meet at the bar and decide on a night together, and then he turns crazy. But that was funny to me.
Yes.
And then the fact that Kennedy reaches out to him to connect over boxing or to work out, that was cute to me. Of course, I hated Willie, Samantha's father, and Rita, and I needed them all to be stabbed. And Rita shows up in Terrence's book, and we just never need her. Rita to me is Terrence Grant.
I'm kind of offended on Terrence Grant's behalf because Rita to me is worse than Terrence Grant. Like, Rita needed to go all the way to hell.
She's so annoying, bruh.
And stay there.
Yeah,
but she was also toxic, right? Like, she's more like Terrence Grant was annoying, but he wasn't allowed the space, right, to be toxic. I think we definitely saw the potential for it. But thankfully, none of the characters allowed him the space and the opportunity to be toxic, right? Whereas Taryn was giving Rita space and time in her life to spew, right? And to really be toxic. So Rita needed an anchor attached to her, ankle and drop her off in Long Island Sound. Bye, Rita. Bye. And Willie, so it's interesting because Willie, I don't know that I wanted to stab Willie. I was just like, wow, you are really, like, even at one point, like, Samantha's like, my dude, it was literally one night. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, and I'm just like, sir, like, here she gave you this, she gave you this interesting occupation, which it was like, oh, okay, he works at he's a curator at the aquarium. I remember thinking, oh, well, that's an interesting, right? And it was like, well, the aquarium is like a museum for, under, sea animals. And I was like, I like the way that's put. And I love the fact that this Black man is a curator at the aquarium. And here he goes showing his entire. It was like, oh, come on, Uncle Willie.
Yeah. He was gross. I did want him to be stabbed because I wanted her to leave him alone. Just be in the hospital for a couple of days, straighten yourself out, and let that be a lesson to you to leave people alone.
Yeah, it was very, kind of going back to what we said about AshleyNicole, right? That she, even in the midst of this very heavy book, there was still some cackle out loud moments, right? Like, that is part and parcel of her writing.
Yep.
And we definitely got that, which I think even more so in this book were really breaths of fresh air, right? Where you were like, whew, yes, thank you. Thank you. Whew, thank you so much.
Yeah, she'll let the air in a little bit to keep you from suffocating.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else. I think we talked about this briefly. One of the things that surprised me is that we were halfway through the book before they talked. That literally the first half of the book, for the first few chapters, they're not even, I mean, they're sort of in each other's orbit, but like so loosely in each other's orbit that it's like strictly like physical proximity. Like, it's nothing to do with them talking to each other. And that we are halfway through the book before we see them have a conversation. That's wild to me.
And contrast that with what we were talking about last week, right? Again, in terms of the pacing.
Exactly.
Because look, she tells us it's going to be slow burn. I was so intrigued by what's going on with him. What's his deal, right? That I was not like, okay, like,
right. Are we going to find the point
any day now, right? Because I was invested in figuring out what was going on with this man.
Yeah.
What was, what had happened to this man? Because that AshleyNicole is going to give you ultimately, there's going to be a love story here, but it was definitely not her usual, which was
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it was beautifully done.
Absolutely.
It was beautifully done. Where slow burn indeed, but again, very fulfilling
Yeah.
slow burn. And that's not always the case, right? Because
True.
sometimes you're just like, all right now, this is like stagnant burn. Ain't nothing happening.
Right. And why are we so many places without finding a
Right.
point?
Right.
I get it. Okay. Any final words? I thought this was gonna be a lot harder to get through, but I think we did okay. Any final thoughts?
Because we had each other.
This is true, right? It would make me want to sing
each other.
Ty's song. As long as we got each other. Anyway, I'm sorry. Wait, that's not Family Ties. That's not Family Ties. What is Lord. That? We got the world in our hand, baby. What? Oh, with Kirk Cameron.
Oh, Growing Pains?
I think that was Growing Pains. Yeah.
I can't even call it to mind because I can call to mind the family, because that Family Ties was Johnny Mathis and Denise Williams.
Yeah, so, Johnny, that was sha la la la.
Yes. What will we do?
Right. Oh, now I gotta watch the show. Where can I watch Family Ties?
Side note, the fact that they had such a soulful intro song for this like lily white Wonder Bread show. The irony.
Hilarious. Yeah, it was Growing Pains. But that was my song. Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like we just dated ourselves. That's okay.